And yes, we are live. I'm here with my new friend Jeff. How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. Happy Monday to you. Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah, well, I don't want to complain, but I've been sick since my anniversary, end of October, and it's just been like this bronchitis
Oh,
thing,
geez.
and it got better and better and better, and then just this weekend it started getting worse again. So I'm kind of
Right.
nervous. I'm kind of nervous, like if it's gonna backslide into that, I don't want to go there again. It was a hellish
Yeah.
nightmare. So that's not the polite answer. The polite answer is, yeah, I'm fine, everything's good. But I
Fighting
keep it
through
real.
it, right?
I
Gritting
keep
your
it
teeth
real.
through it.
Yeah. Pray for me. That's the takeaway. Pray for me. Pray for my health.
Yes, will do, will do.
So I don't really know you that well. I see you on Twitter and you have some excellent things to say and you seem like a really nice guy and Catholic. But I don't know that much about your background. So if you want to walk us through the faith journey, I like to say, from
Yeah.
childhood, what was the family life like and how did you end up where you are today? Just all the bumps on the road and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, let me try. I'm trying to minimize this. I'm seeing the glare there. That helps a bit. I was seeing that glare on my glasses, so I wanted to try to. I had a nice bright white screen on my other
Uh,
monitor here, so I'm trying to get some of these windows out of the way. That
you have
that
too
calmed
many
it down.
monitors. That's why.
That yeah, boy, and I actually I don't wear these glasses for anything other than looking at computer screens. They're blue light glasses. It just starts to mess with my vision. Whether it's scrolling,
Oh,
I'm a recruiter by trade, so for a living,
a
I'm
lot of
looking at
scrolling.
profiles on LinkedIn all day long, and just that repetitive scrolling starts to really mess with my eyes. So
Yeah, yeah.
my wife, one of the many problems she's fixed for me over the years was Jeff, just take these $15 pair of glasses. It'll fix that problem for you. So
Oh, they're not
it's
even corrective at all. It's just for the blue.
no, nope, it just adjusts. My understanding of them is that they just adjust the lighting, on
Okay,
monitors slightly, so you're just seeing it through a lens, and
okay.
whatever it is, the blue light just really starts to irritate
Yeah,
eyes.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
in fact, I think it really came about as, Kindles and different devices, for reading books have grown and grown and
Yeah,
grown, and in fact, I think now you see, they try to make it look like a piece of paper, or they
yeah.
give it more of a darkened or gray background so that it's not so difficult on your
I got
eyes.
the old school one that actually is the I don't if you know if you remember LCD technology, but
Oh,
it's
yeah.
it's the
Yep.
old school LCD, and yeah, that's good. But unfortunately, it died, so I had to get the fake paper white, and it's not as good.
Gotcha. So yeah, but jumping in, and that's a perfect place to start because I think I mentioned this to you that I started writing a book, and it is based on my faith journey because I think this is something we just don't talk about enough
Yeah,
in society. It's not something guys sit down around a beer or we get together and watch a sporting event, but we don't sit down and talk about what could be more important than our faith, and especially how we come to this place in our faith. What was it that grabbed us and really pushed us forward? And I think it has to become there. I don't know what book of the Bible or what story from the Bible you could take that doesn't start with God calling you out into an adventure. You don't get to stay where you are. You've
yeah.
got to go out and impact and experience this creation that He's given us. Um, so that really, I mean, I guess I'll start at the beginning, or I'll just ramble endlessly here. You'll pick up pretty soon. I like to talk,
No
but
problem. No
um,
problem. You can do all the talking. That's good for my throat.
that's right. You're not feeling good anyways, so good night for it. Um, yeah, I've lived in West Michigan my whole life. Was born the fourth child. My parents ended up adopting two more children. My pregnancy was actually quite difficult, so I had a somewhat unique experience growing up in that. When I was about 2.5 years old, we adopted my younger sister from South Korea, and when
Mhm.
I was about 8 years old, we adopted my older brother. He's about 18 months older than I am, from Hong Kong. So very interesting experience as obviously those two individuals being introduced into America at very different stages in their life, right? 8 years old is very different coming to a new country. Or I'm sorry, he was 9 or 10 years old, versus my sister who 1 years old. I don't even think she was 1 year old. So she really has fully grown up in the United States. She's a doctor. My brother was in the military for I'm sorry, many years. So both of them have done very well. I stay in touch with both of them. I mean, as well as my other siblings as well. But just kind of an interesting story there as they grew in America. So, anyways, grew up in a pretty big family. There are 8 of us. Raised Catholic. Went to Catholic schools. It was more than just church on Sundays, which I had no appreciation of. when I was a kid. Um, but went through Catholic middle school, high school, went through a phase where I thought I was an atheist. I wasn't. I was a pissed off teenager, and if everything didn't go my way, I was going to blame somebody for it. So God got the blame. I wasn't going to blame my friends. My parents could ground me. I didn't really think God could do anything to me, so I blamed him. So I don't think I was ever actually an atheist, but went through a tough time through kind of the last couple of years of high school, first couple of years of college. Just got into making lots of bad decisions, as young folks like to do. That continued to pull me further and further away. And then I met an absolutely amazing woman just before I turned 20. We started dating and then ended up getting married by the just after my 21st birthday. Which nowadays not everybody feels this way, but pretty young
Yeah.
for especially for the group I was hanging out with at the time. Lost friends over it that didn't
Mhm.
understand why I'd want to get married. Why don't we want to just keep partying and living the life we want to live? It didn't understand.
Now they understand. Now they understand. Now they
Well,
finally
now a lot of
understand.
those friends are like, man, if I could
Lucky
do the
you.
last 18 years over again,
Yeah. Yeah.
I might make a few different decisions. So, yeah, I was married at 21 years old.
In the church?
Yes, yep.
Cool. She's Catholic.
Catholic church at the time. So I had come back because, well, several different reasons. I can get more in the weeds on this in a little bit because somewhat interesting to my story is that I was raised in the Catholic Church and now attend a Reformed church
Oh, no way.
and would like to kind of discuss that more at
Oh,
some point. I'm sure it'll come back
yeah.
around, and I
Oh, yeah.
think you'll definitely pick up on it as we discuss various topics. You'll pick up some of the Reformed
Oh,
influence in me.
oh.
Christian Reformed Church is huge here in West Michigan. I actually ended up attending a church because one of the neighbors. So there's a small neighborhood in Grand Rapids that, I mean, not exaggerating, 50% of the people, if you live here long enough, you probably started in that neighborhood. They're all post World War II, little 900, 1,000 square foot, one and a half bedroom or one and a half bath, two-bedroom, all these nice little starter homes. So it was a very cool experience because everybody's having kids at the same time in these neighborhoods. If they're not having kids at the same time, their kids are only a couple of years older than you or your kids. So it really was this unique situation where you could go sit on your front lawn with your kids and set out a little blanket and start playing. And before you know it, there's going to be two, three, four neighbors that come out with their kids. And just an incredible community. I mean, I wish we could actually find it again in another neighborhood, but also I think it was just that time in our lives, right? Like that was just a lot of neighbors going through the same thing. But one of our neighbors was a pastor at the church that was right around the corner. And my wife and I had kind of been trying to figure where we wanted to go, where we really wanted to set our roots, what church we wanted to attend. And we went and listened to him preach and in a Christian Reformed church. And he just, that remarkable ability to let's take a reading from the Bible, let's give you the context so that you actually understand why is this so significant in this time and place, and then start to relate it to our daily lives and how this should influence us and how we live forward. So I've always kind of felt that was like the magical formula. If you can find a preacher, a pastor, a priest, if you can find a spiritual guide that truly understands the Bible so that they can teach you the significance of this passage, but also all of the context of what it meant to be alive at that point in time and why this was so significant. Just recently, I was talking with my dad. Um, he had purchased. Are you familiar with Word on Fire
Yeah.
with Bishop Barron?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty big name. So he has started coming out with these Bibles, these Word on Fire Bibles. We have one that's the Pentateuch, and we have one that's the Gospels. And my dad gave me the first 5 books of the Bible to read through. And I called him the other night saying, Dad, I'm so proud of myself. I actually read every word of Leviticus. And he kind of, chuckled with me and said, that's not always the most entertaining book to read, but it's still crucial. And, why might we care about these different sacrifices and whatnot? What's the significance of that other than honoring God? And it's like, well, if you pay attention to all these sacrifices, they're not just asking you to give something up, whether it's a lamb, a sheep, or what, without blemish. They're getting you to take, especially at that point in time, the best of what you rely on in your life. If you don't offer that to God, you're not going to get the real impact here. Now we can go into what that impact is. Obviously, some of it is a little more straightforward, but if you don't sacrifice that which is greatest to you and see that God is still going to care for you, then you may never actually get to that point of truly experiencing God in your world or in your life. And that, so all of a sudden Leviticus goes from a book that's kind of tough to get through to, like, wow, how do I start to view all the different portions of my life? If you can see them in the context of living back then and how much was asked of them by God, how do I start to relate that more and more to my life? And it brought me right back. This is what I was chuckling about with my dad is, growing up during Lent, giving something up for Lent. And, as kids, the jokes were always, I'll give up giving up something for Lent, right? You always do that as some kind of funny thing as a kid. I'll give up homework for Lent. And my parents would always try to instill in me what it really means to give something up for Lent. And it's like almost until I recently read Leviticus did I really understand what that meant. Um, so all of that to say, the changes that I've gone through from a spiritual perspective were from, I grew up with my parents affording me more than I ever realized, didn't come to realize until I had kids of my own. I never understood why my parents paid for me to go to a Catholic school. My wife will tell you, she still gives me a hard time about it, even though our son's a sophomore now. I swore I'd never send my kids to a private school, especially not religious. But like, no, come on. I used to get detentions for having my shirt untucked. Like, what's the point of that, right? There's got to be something more important in education. But I never knew how much they had actually done for me and how much they offered me. And then, so it was kind of like, Jeff, we're going to spoon feed you this great childhood. We're going to give you this introduction to the church. We're going to help you establish this relationship with God. We're going to teach you the importance. And I'm going to throw it all right back in their face by the time I'm 17 or 18 years old. And then I move out and I very quickly become an adult. I very quickly get married. We move into our own place. I'm not a typical 21-year-old out experiencing the bar scene and dating and living this wild, free lifestyle. I'm losing friends because of it. And to me, all of it is like, there's just something calling me in another direction. I just don't think that's right. I love this woman. I want to begin a life with her. This is what we're on earth to do. And then I find a pastor at, a church. And honestly, this neighborhood isn't even that far away from where I grew up. It's only about a mile away. I've driven by this church countless times growing up. And it was kind of on the way from our house to a lot of other things. And now I'm in this church. I know who the pastor is. He's a neighbor of mine. And this guy's connecting with me in ways I didn't ever feel growing up. And even at that point, I knew, like, okay, so Christian Reformed isn't Catholicism, or is it, these are two different churches. So why do they both exist? How did we get here? What's the differences between the two? And I don't necessarily want that to be the focus of going forward, but what I'm getting at with that is it almost made God more real to see that it's not just Catholics that believe in this thing. That doesn't come off the right way, but it's like, well, no, so many people can take different routes to get there, but they find God. And I would read about C.S. Lewis, or I mean, even J.R.R. Tolkien. You read about some of these folks. I loved Lord of the Rings. Who didn't read Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe growing up? And it's like, well, these were individuals that also found God, and they took different routes to get there. And those became some of the most interesting authors that I wanted to read. I wanted to read about those journeys. I wanted to understand why God finally was able to impact them in a way where they're like, yeah, this. And even recently, I think Jordan Peterson is a guy. In a way, it's kind of interesting. I've never actually say, yes, I believe in God. He kind of always dances around that response. And I know, it's an interesting, but I think you see, these stories with a guy like Jordan Peterson, where like, from what I can gather from what I've watched of him, he basically read the Bible and said the Bible encapsulates everything it means to be a human being. And it had all of it down on paper. And not only that, but how to be a happy human being and how civilization should actually behave and what does it really mean to be successful in life. And along the way, it captures almost every psychological theory that there is with how humans interact with each other. I mean, the guy Peterson will talk for hours on Cain and Abel, and how that simple story captures so much of what it means to be a human being. So now that still puts me all the way back at like 22 years old. I'm going along, and things are going just fine. We're attending church regularly, and then all of a sudden, cadets. Are you familiar with what cadets
Yeah,
are?
yeah. Two of my nieces are in cadets, or were.
Okay. So I was a cadet counselor at the church,
Huh?
and we knew there were some changes that were coming. But all the cadet counselors got this email that was basically like, "Hey, we're done with cadets, and we're going to do this new program, and this is what it's going to be." And look, at every church needs to have its vision. I'm not coming on here to try to bash
Okay,
anybody.
you're talking about church cadets. I'm talking about military cadets. Okay, different thing.
Okay, okay. So cadets is Boy Scouts with Bible verses.
Okay. I
It's
hadn't heard about
all
that.
through the
Okay.
church. You do
Oh,
a lot of what you go on camping trips. You learn how to tie knots. You learn
okay.
woodworking. You do pine wood derby races. Whole
That's cool.
nine yards. All the stuff that you might do with Boy Scouts. But you're going to start every meeting with a Bible verse,
Cool.
and then that Bible verse is going to tie in to what you're doing that night. So
Cool.
yeah, to clarify, thank you for
Cool.
pointing that out. Um, so that was okay. So some changes are happening. That's okay. We can roll with some changes. And then more changes started coming from that church. We ended up moving at the time, just kind of as part of our lives. Wasn't really to get away from the neighborhood, but wanted a little bigger house. We have a second child, a little more space. Da da da. Da. So moved a few miles away, and it was like, well, why don't we take this time to find a new church? There were so many changes taking place that it was, are we really here? Are we getting what we need to get out of church? And I'm not one to just step away because something challenges me. That is a huge part of our faith. We should welcome the challenges. That's what strengthens us. Um, but it was so much was taking place that we decided to go somewhere else. So I kind of felt like I was spiritually lost again to a degree. And we found another church. I didn't get as involved. So this was about I was about 35 years old.
Oh, you look like you're in your 20s.
Yeah, yeah, I get that a lot. 40 years old.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, you said that in your bio. Right, right, right.
yep. So about 35 years old, we join a new church. So if we go 5 years ago, that's about 2018. So we were in that church, let's see, end of 2018, 2019. My wife's getting involved. She does all the daycare, the baby stuff during mass. Gems, which is the girls'
They
version,
call it mass?
very similar type of thing. What was that?
They call it mass at the Reformed Church?
Well, yeah, I believe so. I believe we call it mass.
Oh,
It's
okay.
still more Catholic than anything. But um,
So the
so
Christian Reform, it's called Reformed Christian or Christian Reformed Church? What is it?
Christian Reformed
Do
Church,
you know the
CRC.
history of
So
it? Do you know the history of it? Is it connected with any of the reformers like
that is a
Calvin?
very good question.
Calvin?
No, I don't believe so. So the world headquarters is in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Oh, really?
Um,
Really?
yeah,
So it's like a local
and
thing.
it's right. So it's like West Michigan and Iowa are like the
Oh,
two hotbeds of where
wow.
this is. Now, I'm not doing a great job representing the total history of
Well,
this
I'll have to
because it's
look into it. That's a deep dive we could do on our own time, I guess.
yeah, that would be
But
very interesting.
are they sympathetic to the Catholic Church more so than other
Yeah,
communities?
yeah, because and it's kind of interesting because like we have Calvin College or Calvin University here in Grand
Yeah.
Rapids, but it's not Calvinism, like it's not
Okay.
John Calvin.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, I know it's still
Complicated.
more. This is all building to where it's really been these last. So I'm sorry. So we join this new church and we go for a couple of years, and then COVID hits and everybody's got to
Mhm,
go home.
mhm.
And Michigan was pretty rough when it came to COVID. Our lockdowns were pretty tough.
Yeah,
Um, they were pretty rough on churches. You
yeah.
better not. In fact, I think we had a pastor who was arrested. I followed. Oh my gosh, I can't think of the guy's name in Canada.
Artur Pawlowski.
Yes, yes, thank you. I followed that actually pretty closely.
Yeah, yeah. I had
Um,
him on twice on my podcast. A sweet guy.
oh, I'm gonna have to find those because yeah, that was that
Powerful
started to get me
stuff.
pretty
Powerful
riled up.
stuff. Very powerful stuff. When he went to prison,
Very powerful
he
stuff.
was helping the kids in prison when he went to prison. He went to prison for feeding the hungry on the streets. I mean, come on, give me a break. Give me a break, man.
Well, that's how we know God exists, right? I mean,
It's
that's
a
that's
joke.
the antithesis of it on display in this world that we are here to fight against. Um, so COVID hits, and then it disrupts things a little bit with the church, but more than anything, COVID really broke me down for many different reasons. So one, I started off on my own as an independent recruiter in 2019. I had 15 months before zero hiring anywhere in America is taking place. Now, luckily, 2019 was a phenomenal year. It was a great first year. That was how I knew I was ready to go off on my own. I had some clients set up. We were ready to rock. I was getting ready to look at hiring. I had a friend I wanted to hire in. There were some other recruiters that I had known that we had kind of talked about. Do we kind of want to do something together? We were all kind of doing our own thing, but business is great. If we bring a couple of these clients together, we've got enough to, maybe we can start a real practice here, a real recruiting firm, and actually build this into something. And then the rug was totally pulled out from underneath all of it. So um, then I have a undergrad degree in psychology. It's a bachelor's of science, so took a lot of courses in science. Did a lot with actually like evolution of social behavior, evolutionary biology,
Mhm.
understanding our brains and how we've evolved over time, and all of these things. So, not that in any way, shape, or form I considered myself a scientist. It was a bachelor's degree, but I completed a master's degree where I had to complete a thesis, and I understand what it means to read a study. I understand what it means to read past the abstract and the results, and actually pay attention to methodology and understanding. Does this study really actually mean anything, or are we just starting out by establishing a relationship, and then we got to pick it up from there and continue the studies. Understanding that when you're conducting a scientific study, you're trying to prove yourself wrong. You're not just trying to prove yourself right. You have to, by process of elimination, remove every other potential variable that could be impacting this, right? And then we get into COVID, and I see somebody releases, and this is the gold standard for why masks work, because we duct taped one to the face of a mannequin and hooked up pressurized air, shoved into the fractured plastic skull of the mannequin, and boy, less blew through that mask than this other mask, or than this other person that didn't. And it's like, what are we even doing? A lot of people still aren't aware of this. We knew by April of 2020, maybe May at the latest, we had Doctors Bhattacharya, Dr. John Ioannidis, these guys out at Stanford that are conducting studies that are already demonstrating a fatality rate of 0.2%, and the average flu is 0.1 to 0.3%. All the things I never thought or ever wanted to know about the flu, but and that they were finding pre-existing immunity between 35 and 85% of the populations that they were testing. So you mean to tell me we just locked down the entire country when a couple of the best epidemiologists in the world just ran a study that showed up to 85% of certain populations have already had this thing? Like, what are we doing? So I started to see, like, okay, my church has gone away. I can't go there anymore. And Facebook Live just isn't the same thing. Um, Science. What is science doing? This is supposed to be our best and brightest that are prepared to handle these types of situations. Why is it that we are so lost in the woods on all of this? And people that have supposedly studied viruses and coronavirus, I hear from one side, well, coronavirus has always been here. It's been around since before humans have been around. I hear another person telling me that coronavirus was created at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill in the 1960s. It's a chimera of other viruses that we, through experimentation, created this problem. And it's like, okay, so you guys claim to have this patent, a formula for finding the truth. You don't talk about finding truths. You talk about the difference between my faith in God and others' faith in science, as the difference is I can conclusively prove everything to you scientifically. And now we just watched a mess of people falling on their faces being wrong over and over and over, and none of them willing to admit it. None of that. I mean, do you remember the models that first came out predicting millions of deaths in the first year? I mean, it was just to a degree like, okay, if it is that bad, why can't we get to a consensus on it? And if it's not that bad, why are we not backing off? I mean, we're starving people. We're creating homelessness. You know, who knows the repercussions that we're going to experience for years to come? And meanwhile, if we know it impacts certain people so much more so, in the state of Michigan, our protocol was if there's not room at the hospital, put a COVID patient in a nursing home.
Yeah.
Why are we doing that if we know that the elderly are the most vulnerable? So, anyways, I don't mean to rant. I don't know everything about COVID. I don't know how we should have done everything perfectly. But it was like one by one, I was watching the world descend into chaos.
Well, I have the answer. I have the answer. I mean, you're saying you don't know what the solution was, but I know what the solution was. Everyone should protect themselves and their vulnerable loved ones at all times. Period. That's always the case. That's always the case, right? Like, just protect yourself at all times. Protect your vulnerable at all times. Hey, don't put
Yeah.
your baby in the microwave. Don't put your baby on the tramway. Don't put granny in the freezer. Like, it's just like, take care of yourself and your loved ones, right? And if you want to go out and see what Pfizer and Moderna have on offer, that they're promising you they're going to reduce the sniffles and the fever and the sore throat and all these symptoms. If you're excited by that, what they have on offer, then go and do that, right?
Do it.
I wasn't excited by that. I don't need to reduce the symptoms. I have water, clean drinking water flows out of my kitchen tap, and I have a nice
Right.
bed. I have a nice bed. So I know how to deal with the stupid symptoms of a cold and flu. Okay.
Yeah.
Now the vulnerable who were at risk, they were more at risk from malpractice. I'm probably gonna lose my YouTube channel because of talking about this, but anyway, we'll change the topic. We'll change the topic because I've run into problems before. It seems like they're monitoring less. They've moved on to other news cycles, so maybe we're okay to talk about it.
Yeah, I don't want to get you booted off of Apple.
We'll see
and
what
YouTube
happens. We'll see what happens.
So,
Anyway, we're on the same page. You and I are on the same page. So
yeah, and I mean, quite honestly, again, just makes sense. If you're going to tell me something does A, if it doesn't do A, stop telling me it does A. Okay, we can see that it doesn't do A. Let's move on to our next thing here. So, anywho, so that's all taking place, and I'm getting into some pretty dark places personally.
psychologically.
Yeah, psychologically, and I've had some issues with anxiety and things throughout my life. That was why I was making some of the bad choices in my later years in high school and early college. I didn't really know how to deal with what I was feeling with, so I sought out drugs and alcohol and tried to numb the pain and do other things. So, but now I'm a big boy, so I'm going to try not to do that. Although during COVID, I definitely went through a phase of too many drinks and needed to peel that back. Boy, it did feel weird for them to say, stay home, we'll keep liquor stores open, pot shops open, we'll deliver your food to you, but don't actually go get any sunlight, don't exercise. Anyways, I'm sorry, I'll move on. So it finally just got to a point, and this is what I think is so important about sharing my faith journey. It really has nothing to do with me, but it's a message of, to anybody out there, when you get to such a point of despair, that's not the end. It's truly, I feel it was God breaking apart every barrier I built around me that was purely made up of my own ideas, my own opinions, my own truths, and my truth is just about my most hated statement that society likes to make nowadays. I don't understand why it's my truth or your truth. It's just truth. But I got to a point where, okay, I got nothing. So I'm going to go back to God, and I'm going to go back to God in the most basic way possible. I'm going to read the Bible. I've never read the Bible cover to cover. I am going to start with reading the Bible. As I jokingly alluded to earlier, I didn't get all the way through Leviticus, but took my time, read through the Bible, started to just, who are some people I should read? Starting to talk to folks I knew. Who would be some inspirational folks? I want reading that's going to be challenging. I don't want soft reading. I want theology. I want difficult topics. I jumped into Paradise Lost without any homework, anything up front. I just wanted to experience it as it is. It took about 5 chapters, or in Paradise Lost, they call it books, but it took about 5 books for me to even really learn the language. And luckily, the edition I bought has all kinds of footnotes walking you through various references within the epic. The first 20 pages are just exploring who John Milton was, what this was all about. But ultimately, I didn't even read much of that. I just want to jump in and experience it. And by the 5th book, I'm confused. By the 6th book, it's opening my eyes and my mind in ways I had never experienced before. It was truly a remarkable experience reading that book. I bought a series of books by C.S. Lewis, which includes Mere Christianity, The Great Divorce, Screw Tape Letters, Miracles, The Problem of Pain, A Grief Observed, and there might be one more in there too. And I'm reading these books that, I mean, I'll read a chapter, and luckily Lewis broke a lot of his books down into many chapters with few pages, which is really nice, because I'd read a chapter and go, what did I just read? And I've got to go back and do it again and do it again. And then I start to understand. And some of it is obviously I'm reading 1940s, from England English, right? A little bit of the old English in there. It just takes a little bit of understanding references, understanding how they use certain words differently. But I'm for the first time in my life, after 38 years of attending church, in a Catholic church and then a Reformed church, for the first time I truly feel like I'm being brought in to Jesus Christ. It's not, yeah, I believe in this, or I guess I believe in this. This is true. I can go beyond my belief in this, in that as I'm reading these books, it's connecting so many dots in my life, as far as how I bring misery into my own life, how I make myself happy through what I think are the material joys and pleasures of this world, that I'm going to find happiness through, and it's not. Your happiness is going to be found through Christ. And at a point, I was even saying, like, I'm feeling more insecure now than when I started this journey, and I have, a split second of doubt that's immediately erased by this revelation that, well, that makes sense, because God is slowly but surely peeling away all of the bad, and it's making me vulnerable for the first time. He's removing addictions from me. He's removing my selfishness. He's removing my greed. There's still plenty of that there, I'm sure, but he's stripping me down to my bare bones and forcing me to look at who I am for the first time. And it has been nothing but growth since then. And I've never felt these types of, I mean, that may seem like such a simple idea. We've all read it before. God's going to break you down and build you up. But when you are not only experiencing it, but allowing yourself to honestly experience it and not trying to cover it up with falling back into those old habits, seeking out those old ways, what you thought was happiness. I forget who said it, but somebody said the difference between atheism and theism is the difference between happiness and joy. Happiness is fleeting and joy is life sustaining. And when you find Jesus Christ, you will have life sustaining joy in your heart. It will not simply be a fleeting happiness that goes away.
Absolutely. I want
So
to give a shout out. I want to give a shout out to my friend Nicola Krisick. He's in the live chat. He says, "Hello, gentlemen. Peace of Christ to you both." So that's my
nice.
it's my good friend. He's been on the show many times.
Excellent.
You might get to meet him sometime if you hang around.
Yeah, very cool.
Are you going to start your own podcast one day?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it kind of depends. So this has also led, kind of, as a byproduct of lockdowns and whatnot. I ended up, I had mentioned things were kind of deteriorating with my job. I honestly believe, through the grace of God, he connected me with some great individuals, and I was able to turn things around. But I think I've gotten to a point kind of this year where there's a little bit of a cumulative effect. I was able to kind of dodge the hurdles for the last 3 years, and then this year it it kind of caught up a little bit. Now,
Yeah.
nothing terrible, but definitely a point where it's like, okay, Jeff, you've been doing this on your own for 5 years, coming up to 6 years. Most small businesses go through this. You have to be able to continue to evolve the business
Yeah.
and not just do what you were doing. So again, I send out this message and I want to share this faith journey because small business owners all across America were losing their businesses, and that again is another point where you feel like you're at your lowest. You could never feel more despair. I guess I failed. I guess I'm done. It's not. Keep your hope, keep your faith, believe in yourself, believe in God. He's just setting you up for something else. If you
It,
keep your eyes open to it. And I think any career counselor, any career coach will tell you one of the most important parts of developing a great career is just keeping your eyes open to opportunity. We like to try to humanize all of this as much as we can because we just can't give enough credit to God. I mean that both literally and metaphorically. But it's like, yeah, you can put it that way, but all those moments in our lives are just the point where God's saying, I'm about to take you somewhere that's awesome. You just got to have your eyes open and your ears open. If you listen and you follow, you're going to get somewhere you never thought was possible.
yeah. Did you follow up here in Canada? Because I'm not too far from you in Montreal, but
Yeah,
did you follow the Freedom Convoy 2022?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. That again, I don't want to get you kicked off your platform, so I won't mention anything about the current PM of Canada. So,
Yeah.
but that was something. That was again kind of
Crazy.
simultaneously the
Crazy.
amazing efforts of humanity
Yeah.
just to try
Was
to
that
help.
an inspiration for you guys down south of the border or no?
Yes and no. Yes and no. I mean, the United States is really interesting, as every country is. Every country. I shouldn't make it just about the United States. Humanity is very, very interesting, but it inspired the people that were open to be inspired by it. It was very inspiring to the individuals that knew what was going on in the world was wrong, and to watch this group of people to risk absolutely everything and to continue to fight. And some of the videos that I would see from people in Canada. Are you familiar with Rebel News?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so start following them because they do so much amazing coverage where it's like, hey, we're just here showing you what's going on, right? And there you'd see these, some speech from Trudeau about these terrorists taking over Canada, and then you'd see these live videos of Rebel News of people like dancing around a campfire and serving food to each other, and just, you know, how do you look at that as anything other than look at you? You're trying to hold us down, and we're going to celebrate life anyways, man. We're not going to let you just hold us down. There's too much that we've got going on. We need to fight back. But COVID was just so polarizing. There were plenty in America. They just wrapped them all in with MAGA, right? They're just a bunch of Trumpers that are causing
Yeah.
trouble and don't have enough brain cells to rub two of them together. It was kind of ludicrous. But no, there definitely was a lot of inspiration from it. It's just I think that happened at a point where so many people were dug in.
Yeah.
It was they weren't going to change their view on COVID no matter what at
Are
that point.
people wearing masks again down there? Are they saying COVID's not over and these sorts of things? Are they getting back into it or is it done?
But very few, very, very, very
Okay.
few.
Okay, that's good.
I
That's
I
good.
mean, even at least so West Michigan is somewhat conservative.
Okay.
I'm sure if you went out to California, you'd see a lot more folks walking around with masks. But
Yeah.
in where I am, it's down to the point where, quite honestly, it's probably no different than it was before COVID. I
Uh
just didn't pay attention if
uh
anybody wore a mask
yeah.
before COVID, right? It hadn't been politicized at that point. Because it's one or two here or there, which again we would see before, especially because it's more normal in Asian countries. So we would see from time to time Asians or whatnot. So, but no, it's anytime if any mayor or governor in America tried to do a lockdown at this point, I think we'd see torches at their front gate. I think the majority have had enough. We're not doing this again. Doesn't matter what you tell us.
So, if you don't mind, do you mind if I ask you a random question? It's sort of off topic. Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Uh, it's on my mind a lot, obviously, always, but especially since what's been happening in the Middle East lately. It's about
Yeah.
Israel. It's about Israel and God's plan for Israel. I don't know if you've watched my podcast. I'm very open about how I feel about it, but
Okay.
I'm just wondering what you think in terms of the sort of God's plan and what he's ordaining versus what he's permitting concerning that hot spot in the Middle East. What's your take generally? You know, from a religious, spiritual, mystical sort of point of view, not so much
Yeah, no, 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 no.
geopolitics.
It definitely feels like a landmine that you're going to throw out here for me, but that's okay. I can step on them because I like talking through them afterwards. Um, okay, so I have. I want to be somewhat careful on how I state this. Obviously, all life is precious. Is first and foremost. I think if I didn't lead with that, I'd be lying to myself. All life is precious, no matter what. We should seek to preserve life. We should seek to love each other and not hate.
Yeah,
Um, I believe that the Jewish people were chosen by, or Hebrew people were chosen by God as the chosen people in the Old Testament. I believe that Jesus Christ is the new covenant that folds all of humanity into the chosen people of Christ. So, to a degree, it requires me to say that the Jews are not the only chosen group anymore. I'm not sure if that's exactly where you wanted me to go with this,
no,
but
I don't.
maybe
I want you to just be authentic and sincere. What your vision is. You know, what's your vision?
sure, sure, sure.
Because
Um,
I don't know ultimate reality. I just have certain hunches and stuff like that. But I like to hear different
yeah,
perspectives. So this is an interesting perspective. So keep going.
yeah. So,
Keep going.
so that, but at the same time, I would never want. I have a great deal of respect for the Jewish faith. I have a great deal of respect for the Jewish people, not simply because of what they have endured over thousands of years, but it definitely. I mean, I was talking to a friend the other day, and he was like, "Well, this is just going to kind of turn into like the Ukraine Russia thing that's going to draw on forever." I'm like, "Well, I don't know if you understand how Israel operates. Um, they're pretty well organized. I mean, if you follow or if you know anybody that truly practices the Jewish faith, they don't allow a whole lot of leeway in straying from the path. I mean, and I have a great deal of respect for that. I made that. I joked earlier about how going to a Catholic school, if my shirt was untucked, I got a detention. Where it's like I know guys that go to a public school, they get in a fight and the teachers just break it up. But as a kid, I didn't appreciate that. As an adult, I appreciate that. I appreciate the discipline. I appreciate so much more the rituals of the Catholic Church. That really continues to draw me back to Catholicism. And obviously that lends me to have a great deal of appreciation of it within the Jewish faith. So now we look at, so that's a little bit of just my thoughts on Judaism or the Jewish faith or Jewish people. Now we look at what's taking place. I don't know the history, and again, I think that's why you said like we don't need to go into the geopolitical
Yeah.
necessarily
Yeah.
because I'm not a historian. I don't. Who knows who stepped on whose toes when and where, and
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
we get is the whole truth of this. However, it seems as though uh, there's one country in the world that is attacked so consistently that they created something called the Iron Dome to keep themselves safe, which in a degree is, I mean, almost feels like, fine, just keep launching rockets at us. As long as we can protect ourselves, we're not going to attack you. And then individuals still decide to attack. And again, there's so much tension in the region. It's difficult, and this is why I led by saying all life is precious because you don't just get to say. And this conversation I have quite a bit when it comes to abortion. Because a bad thing happens doesn't mean we get to go do another bad thing. It's not a 1 + 1 = 2 situation. Why does ending a life make it better? Whatever bad happened to you, why does ending more life make it better? So it makes it a very difficult situation. I listen, in a perfect world, I don't think there's a single person in Israel that would choose to be at war right now. I don't think anybody is saying, "Oh, thank goodness they did that. Now we can finally go to war." I mean, maybe some who just have a hatred for Hamas have a hatred for Palestine, but let's leave that to the side. Um, this is a situation where I'm glad I'm not in the position to have to decide what they do next, because how Israel continues to sit there and just say, okay, well, I guess we won't do anything. When your only answer is war, I don't think anybody wants to make that decision. I can understand why they did it. I can understand why they've moved in the direction that they have. But again, people acting like, Israel just wants to go to war. I don't understand that take on the situation at hand. So I don't know. Did that kind
Yeah,
of
well,
get where?
there's no expectation. I just want to get your perspective. I get different perspectives. I ask a lot of people on my podcast this question, and I just listen and keep it in mind when I'm evaluating. But I'm not. There's no. I don't have a dog in the fight. So I mean, it's not like I need to come to a hard decision.
Sure, sure.
But before we wrap up here, because we do have to wrap it up soon, I want to ask you something completely. It seems like it's completely off topic, but it is kind of related. Has to do with you know, European Christians coming to North America and converting the native peoples. I'm very conflicted about that. But
Okay.
a lot of conservative Christians just say, well, it was good for them and we civilized them and life is better now because the Christians from Europe came, and that doesn't quite sit right with me. I don't fully buy
Yeah.
that. I know that Christ is the answer and that we should bring to Christ everyone. But I also know there were abuses, and I know that there were lies and false promises made, and treaties that were violated, and I know the government was crappy just then and now. I don't trust the
No,
government,
putting it
but
politely.
the church, like true Christians, are good, and they did good stuff. So how do you hold that tension with the the First Nations people in North America and the Christians who came, Catholic and non-Catholic? What's your sort of hunch about all that? It's a complicated
Yeah, 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 yeah.
story, but
Well, again, I'll lead with all life is precious. So if you're going to come over, and I actually might even say before that, I've the true definition, and not to say we can take the Lord's name in vain in other ways. I mean, what could be a worse action than to lie and deceive in the name of Jesus Christ? What is a worse action a human being could commit? I mean, take whatever the worst thing is you can imagine, and then all you have to do is go 5 seconds before it happened and have somebody say, "I'm doing this in the name of Jesus Christ." That to me is the absolute worst action human beings can engage in. Now, if you're a follower of Christ, puts a lot of responsibility on your shoulders, because if you're a follower of Christ, you're to a degree innately saying, what I'm doing in the name of God. Now, again, that's a bit unfair, but to a degree we need to keep these things in mind. So is there extra, additional responsibility on Christians to act in the way of Jesus Christ? Yes, there is, absolutely. You shouldn't. I don't think the best way to get anybody to your side is to show up and kill them. I don't think that's a good idea. Whether it was where they put smallpox on blankets and handed them out to Native Americans, and
allegedly, I don't know. I'd like to hope that that's not true, but maybe it's true. It's disgusting.
well, but it's what I'm getting at with all of this is because this will come up where it's like, well, hey, yeah, you guys did the Crusades. It's like, well, if we're looking for kill count, Mao takes everybody. Okay, Stalin takes everybody. So let's not discuss. Let's not try to act like one of us is better than the other for that reason. But I think you see when almost anything anything that humans build, if it grows to a certain level of power, it becomes corrupted from the inside out. We've seen it with governments across the world. Why do civilizations rise and fall? You get to a point of whether it's laziness that allows the corruption. You typically see that whether it was the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire. People are saying it about the United States right now. We've grown to a point where we're so comfortable, life is so easy, we become corrupt. And I think to a degree, I mean, what was colonization? I mean, they were just going left and right, taking whatever land they wanted. Now, obviously, it wasn't quite that simple, but you had power hungry folks with the means to get out and take over the world in ways we had never seen before. And I think you see it grew to a point of corruption in that, sure, I'm sure there were plenty that were sincerely trying to help and really wanted to spread Christianity, and God bless them.
Yeah,
I'm sure there were countless that were
yeah,
just as frustrated then as we could be now with their actions. So Is the spread of the word of Jesus Christ a good thing? Always, always. However, what is going on around that spread of the word of Jesus Christ? Because do you really consider it, evangelizing? You really consider that you're converting folks when you're killing them over here, but trying to tell them over here to listen to you, and you're playing all these games with them. So sure, I'm glad Christianity ended up over here, but to me it's an example of absolute power corrupts absolutely, and unfortunately they were doing it with a cross as well.
Yeah, I guess if you read the Old Testament, it's not perfect either. Uh, God's people, God's priestly people, they were a stiff-necked people. They liked falling into the idolatry of Egypt or wherever else that they lived. And just look at Moses, how upset he was with the orgy that his brother made at the foot of the mountain or whatever. It's just like
Yeah, yeah,
it's always the same story. It's always the same story.
always
But
the same story.
yeah, I guess corruption is the key word, and it's just sad. I'm just wondering, like, in terms of, just very briefly, because I have to wrap it up here, in terms of ecology and the noble savage fantasy where the Amerindians lived in union with nature and they were in touch with nature.
Oh,
I think
oh.
there probably is a lower carbon footprint, if you want to talk about that modern newspeak or whatever. There was a lower carbon footprint among the savages, and a savage is just someone who lives in the woods, right? Lives in the
Sure,
forest. It's not a
sure,
derogatory term. It wasn't at first, but there's a lower excuse me, a lower carbon footprint, that's for sure. But
sure.
there are Luddite Christians who say no to technology, and the older I get, the more I become sort of crusty and cynical about technology and the finer things in
Yeah,
life and fine dining and people with money. It just aggravate me,
yeah,
and I start
yeah.
looking to the noble savages, like they're in touch with nature, they're in touch with their family, they love each other. And this is, again, just Pollyanna glasses looking at it, because if you go, the reality obviously is just as complex as in the Old Testament. People are savages,
Yeah,
in the derogatory sense of the term, like they're brutal. They're brutal.
yeah,
So yeah, so in terms of ecology, there's a lot of nonsense on the left pushing this idea of man-made climate change. It's the end of the world, and the tipping point and all this sort of nonsense. It seems like they don't believe in God, but then again, my Pope seems to a certain extent to believe in that. We have to be stewards of the earth, so there's a good component to ecology, obviously.
yeah.
And I don't want to breathe dirty air or drink dirty water. No one does.
No one does.
But there's a political movement which is demonic. And I've worked for the Green Party.
Yeah,
I've worked for Pollution Probe. I've worked for Friends of the Earth. I've worked for these companies, and it's Marxist, Leninist, feminist, atheist, whatever. Like, it's really sick. So I'm just wondering how you, as a Christian, can hold the tension with being good stewards, and then the green movement as we see it championed by the left. How do you deal with that tension?
yeah. Perfect time for you to ask this question. In the last few nights, I had somebody knock on our front door who's going door to door selling solar panels,
Ah.
and so I step outside to talk to the guy. And, you're near us. It's cold right now. I don't want to just
Yeah.
leave the door open. I got a
Yeah.
dog yipping at him. So I step outside to talk to this guy. And he says, "Hey, look, we got this great deal. It's going to save you all this money." Da, da, da. I go, "Well, it's not going to save us any money." I go, "Solar panels are extremely expensive. I've already looked into these before. You can go spend $500 on a panel that maybe you'll keep your wife's hair dryer going for long enough to dry her hair. But other than that, it's just not feasible at this point." And he said, "Well, we need to be doing things that are better for the environment." And I go, "Well, solar panels aren't necessarily better for the environment. So the resources that you need to mine destroys portions of the earth. It's terrible. I go, it enslaves people. It's the waste that is produced by them." So long story short, I start talking about this with him. He goes, "Wow." He's like, "Honestly, I'm not even going to argue with you because you know more about this than anybody else that I talk to. Most people just swear at me and tell me to get off the front step." And I go, "Well, listen to you. I'll be completely honest with you. I'm a Christian. I believe that we were put here on this planet to take care of it. I think that is our role." I go, at a much lower level, I'm a fisherman. I don't even eat fish out of our rivers anymore because I'm
Mm.
so concerned about how much we've polluted them. And it's in a myriad ways. They have fish testing positive for Viagra and birth control. What's going to happen to me if I eat those? So it's like I think we absolutely need to do things to take care of the earth. However, I'm not going to buy into some gimmick that's going to shift $1 billion to these rich guys' pockets from those rich guys' pockets and then pretend like we're doing something good. That's not what this is. It's a business plan. It's a strategy like any other.
Shell game.
You introduce a new product, you shove it down everybody's throat as a solution to a problem. I mean, I think we're only on our 8th decade of the world's going to end in 10 years if we don't act now. So, and it was really clever, really clever how they did this. If you walk through, and I had to actually ask somebody on Twitter, I'll try to share this with you. He put together like 80 headlines from over the decades on climate change. And the 50s, when it was just getting started, they didn't really know what to say. 60s and 70s, it was all impending ice age. Ice age around the corner in the 60s and 70s. Well, somebody in the 80s got a hold of it. We're like, guys, it's actually starting to warm up. We got to stop pushing that. So then 90s hit full bore global warming. I mean, it was everywhere. Holes in the ozone. If you stand underneath it, it's going to be scorched earth. You get cancer immediately. We're going to have, Venice will be underwater. California is going to be underwater. Florida is going to be underwater. Alabama and Mississippi are going to be underwater. We're hosed, guys. It's too late. And then all of a sudden, and this was crucial. Have you ever heard of Judith Curry? Read Judith Curry.
Okay.
So she, after Hurricane Katrina, came out with a report. Her and her colleagues came out with a report that in the last 20 years, there had been twice as many significant storm events as the prior, like 50 or 100 years. Something demonstrating like, guys, this is significant. We are seeing, by orders of magnitude increases in storms. And then some of her colleagues came to her and said, no, hold on. Some of this data you're getting isn't correct, She, being the absolutely amazing person that she is, was like, wait, no, we're wrong. Like, we got to stop and look at this again. As you might imagine, immediately ostracized by the scientific community. She's now been fighting uphill battles, ever since. And this was like, 2007, somewhere right around there. But that was when we got climate change. All of a sudden, we eliminate warming, we eliminate cooling. If you wake up today and you notice a change from, this day last year or just yesterday or whatever, right? All you have to do is notice a change. And now we can sell it as humans are destroying the planet. Meanwhile, since 2020, greening across the globe has increased by over 20%. Now, greening is a term just to describe the amount of green on the planet, just plant growth. Now, it's amazing that this world, some people kind of laugh at me when I say this because they think it's too simplistic, but I like it. It's amazing that this world somehow, has this life on it that creates oxygen for us. And we have to have that oxygen to survive. Now, that plant life that creates that oxygen feeds off of something that it converts into oxygen that just happens to be a byproduct of one of the most important components of bringing a civilization out of poverty, of keeping us healthy, warm, increasing transportation. I mean, obviously, I don't need to go any further. It's pretty remarkable the world just happens to work out that way. And it's even more remarkable that the supposed scientists who understand how this all works, can actually sell the idea of feeding plants more of what they need to turn into oxygen for a growing population is a bad thing. Now, I've said that. I've had people laugh at me, but never refute it. When I say it, please break it down to me. I hear people, well, it's not just CO2 that they turn into oxygen. It almost is just CO. Like, you guys really should read a little bit more on this. It's not that, there's not a whole lot of gray area within this. Plants need to consume carbon in order to produce oxygen. So again, I'd love to have somebody prove me wrong. I'm sure if you have more than 2 viewers, somebody's laughing at me right now for making that statement.
I have exactly 2 viewers right now, exactly 2. But
Okay.
I have to go. I have to get going now. But my friend Haley Luya is here. She's a friend of the podcast. You might know her actually from around the internet. She's everywhere. But
Okay.
she's asking, why you're not Catholic. This is just like going back to the beginning again, but just
Ah,
very
sure.
briefly, very, very briefly, why are you not Catholic? And could you possibly see yourself becoming Catholic in the future? Not that it
Well,
matters, but
that's got to be the cliffhanger question, man. We got to come back
part
next
two,
week.
part two, part two. Yes, we could do
No,
that.
I would say this. I wouldn't. I don't know if I would say I'm not Catholic.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
I have next to me Bishop Barron's "This Is My Body: A Call to the Eucharistic Revival." I have the Socrates Children series that was written
Ah,
by Peter Kreft or Kreeft. I forget how to pronounce his last
Craft.
name.
They say Craft.
Kreeft, which is absolutely
Amazing.
phenomenal.
Amazing.
Well, and my favorite one is the one that talks about. My favorite volume is the one that talks about
Oh,
medieval philosophers because they're
wow.
all Catholics.
Wow.
Saint Thomas is my hero.
Yeah.
Saint Augustine is right behind him. I go
Yeah.
back and forth so
Uh-huh.
often. Saint Augustine, I really feel like, man, I can connect with how you lived your life.
Yeah.
You know,
Uh-huh.
I,
Yeah.
God, give me. Oh shoot, I'm gonna forget it. What was it? Give me abstinence.
Yeah, but not yet.
Yeah, but not yet. Yeah, exactly, exactly. So how many times have I said that? Um,
There are 426 dogmas in this book.
oh, that'd be phenomenal.
Do you think that you agree with and give assent of intellect and will to all 426, or are there some that you might say, well, I don't accept this dogma or that dogma of the Catholic Church?
You know what? I would actually, I would just say this. What I appreciate about the Reformed Church is it has such a focus on the Gospels.
Yeah.
Go to the Gospels, go to the Gospels, go to. I appreciate that. And again, I was kind of brought into it from a pastor that I really connected with. I mean, we were good friends outside of
Yeah.
church,
How
and
old is
just
he? Is he a bit older than you?
no, my age. So
Oh, no
our
way.
kids were growing up together. Yeah,
Ah,
this is when we lived in that
that's
neighborhood.
fun. That's fun.
And he really influenced me. It was like, okay, let's give this a shot.
You're
But
still in
no,
touch with him?
no, that's kind of a whole nother story. But
Okay. Okay.
unfortunately, well, he is. Well, that's a whole nother story. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I definitely have never. I would say I've never truly stepped away from being a Catholic.
Well, we'll
That
talk about that next time if you don't mind. If you don't mind, when you come back
yeah,
next time in 2024, because I'm booked solid till the new year. But it was great to meet you, and we could talk for hours, but I'm not feeling well. I got to get back to the wife too. But
yeah.
I really appreciate meeting you. You've got a lot of youthful energy and ideas, and I really appreciate your enthusiasm and your fire. You're on fire for Christ. So great to meet you. I hope you're going to pray for me and mine.
Yeah.
I always enroll each and every one of my guests in a perpetual mass. So you're getting the prayers of the mass every day, you and your
Wow.
family.
Thank you. Thank you.
So just remember me and mine in your prayers, okay?
Yeah, we'll do. Oh,
And we'll
thank you,
talk
David. I
soon.
appreciate it.
And we'll see each other on Twitter.
Yeah, we'll see each other on Twitter sooner than later. That's for sure.
All right, my brother. I love you. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, love you
God
too, man. God
bless.
bless.
God bless you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.